Therapist perception.
Bachelorette. As we were talking more about Bachelorette and upcoming Bachelor in Paradise and Bachelor, there are so many Bachelor tropes, so to speak, that we encounter each season. And so we wanted to really dig into and demystify what some of those tropes in Bachelor Nation are, why they bother us so much, and maybe how we can kind of make some meaning over like some of these recurrent themes or recurrent characters that we see portrayed in the show.
Perfect. Exactly. There's so many patterns that just repeat themselves over and over again. And these tropes just keep coming up. So,
yes. So what is the first thing that we are unpacking?
The first thing is just this concept of falling in love.
Right.
And all of the terminology that comes along with it.
I have a lot of feelings about this quote unquote falling in love. But yes. Falling in love.
You love it. You love it.
Do I? But yeah, falling in love, or just, how love is expressed and maybe portrayed on the show is...
And the stages of it.
The stages of love. There's a lot of emphasis on that. So we thought that would be a good place for us to start because love is like what the show's all about, right?
Yes. And it just seems to follow this formula almost. So that the viewers get to expect every season. I know I expect it. And I just think, oh, it's the first episode. This is where this sort of thing happens. Oh, we're about 3 weeks in. This is what's going to happen. And so there's a lot of predictability around those little stages that inevitably happen every time.
Yes. Yeah. So there is like this almost prescribed staging of those professions of love or the steps of love. Do you remember or recall like generally where they show up or what they are and where they show up in each season?
So like starting from the beginning. Okay. So from the beginning, there's the I'm attracted to you. Sometimes there's the jumping right to I really like you. And that one's a little much already because they don't know each other at all. The attraction makes a little sense because you're seeing them visually and you're getting to experience them a little bit at first. But yeah, I really like you is one of those steps where it's like, ooh, they might not make it to the next episode because they've said that already. But the I'm attracted to you usually is that first piece of dialogue that we hear.
The first expression.
Yes.
Of interest. Yeah. I like you. I'm attracted to you. I mean, let's not forget, I can see my husband or wife in this room already.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
On night one. After the limo entrances. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But yes, as you're saying, the contestants, I guess that's what they're called, right?
I guess, yeah. Suitors.
They do that's their initial like kind of dipping their toe into a proclamation of kind of appreciation, adoration for the lead.
Yeah.
And then we start to see a little bit more direct expression of I like you. I
really like you.
And I could see a future with you. Seems to be kind of the next grouping of phrases that happen. And that usually happens like maybe around the time in like pre and post COVID episodes, like when they travel.
Yes.
When they like leave the mansion is when we hear a little bit more of like, this is getting serious.
Yeah, they're taking the leap off the continent and then and so did their expression.
Yes, they do dive a little deeper. And then comes my favorite.
I'm falling in love with you.
Ew.
Which Amy and I differ on a little bit.
Yeah, we'll definitely unpack the falling in love and why I have such strong feelings about it, and Catherine is wrong. But the falling in love seems to most consistently happen right around hometowns.
Yes.
And that's like the ticket. That is the ticket to hometowns is I am falling in love with you. And so whether that's the ticket, it's a round ticket to hometowns or ticket to overnights, you've got to say I'm falling in love.
At least.
If
you haven't, it's almost like falling in love pre-hometowns. Mm-hmm. And then fantasy suites is I love you. Mm-hmm. Or actually, I do love you. For whatever reason, they feel the need to put the do there, which I have a theory around. But
right. And that's something that the contestants say.
Yes.
Sometimes we see the lead say it back, mm-hmm. which is a big thing. Right. Then we get to the proposal. If this is a season where a proposal happens, and that's mm-hmm. typically when we see the lead reciprocate those feelings of I love you or I do love you. Mm-hmm. But as you were saying at the beginning, it seems to follow this very like systematic pattern progression of expression. And there's some validity to that because when our feelings grow, of course, they need to start somewhere in order to get maybe deeper. Mm-hmm. But what I think makes some of these like this expression of love a little bit of a trope is that it doesn't really feel like it's authentic. Yeah. And again, feels like a means to an end. Like if I say this, then I will get a rose or I'll get to the next step.
Right. No, absolutely. It's not the same progression that happens in relationships outside of this world. And maybe that's why it just seems so inauthentic.
Could be. So let's talk about falling in love.
Oh, okay. Let's move this over here. Okay. So from my understanding, the I'm falling in love means I could see myself getting to that point of loving you if we continue to progress, if this relationship continues on the same trajectory it's on, my feelings are getting stronger and I think that I will love you.
Okay.
What's your problem with that?
I think that sounds nice. But how do you know that? Like, how do you know that when I say I'm falling in love, it means that? Maybe you're making a lot of assumptions or projecting what you think it means or what it means to get to that point in a relationship.
I mean, that's a really good point because the I love you holds so much weight in this show that the I'm falling in love with you kind of gets thrown around like nothing. But so maybe I don't know. It's just like maybe it's from experience. Mm-hmm. But then again, you're right in that it could be my experience and is I know what it's like to get to that point with somebody. And that's what it led to. So now I'm using that past experience here, but that could be totally different than your experience or your understanding of what I'm falling in love with you means. So maybe they need to clear that up for you, for me, and for themselves.
Right. Well, I think like the way that I see falling in love used on the show, it like reminds me of Oprah. Like you get a car and you get a car and you get a car. It feels like you can just kind of like casually throw it out at any point. And because they're safe.
They won't like get in trouble from the other person.
Yes, yeah. It's true. And because there's such a like convoluted or maybe unclear idea of like what those words actually mean, you can be a little bit more casual with it. And I think that's what makes me dislike it so much is because it feels manipulative.
Okay. No, I get that. I also think that there's this spectrum between I really, really like you and I love you that I'm falling in love with you falls in. So maybe it's outside of the Bachelor world where it makes more sense, where there's like a longer period of time where that's probably happening. But in Bachelor Nation world, then maybe there's no place for it, because you do have to just get from I really like you to I love you. And the in between is what? A few hours a day, a week.
A week if they're lucky.
Yeah.
But I know when we've talked reactivity TV before, a lot of times what we come back to is having like more vulnerable, more authentic conversations about what the experiences of each contestant has. And that's where I wish, like, it feels like falling in love is such a cop out, and it would be much more vulnerable and much more honest if instead of I'm falling in love with you, the person said just what you said. I really care about you a lot. My feelings are really developing strongly. I'm really excited about you and about our future. Like, that's a lot more vulnerable to say, but it's also more honest, and it allows for you and the other person to figure out if you're actually on the same page.
Yes. And going along with the formula, it doesn't necessarily like match up, because if they don't use that love word, whether it's I'm in love or I'm falling in love, then they get ridiculed from whoever the lead is for having not said it yet, having not gotten there yet.
Another one.
Can I get there? Will we get there? Just another. Yeah.
You're so right. I mean, it does feel there is that transactional basis that exists on this show where, yes, you need to say the magic words in order for the lead to maybe take you seriously, or to get an understanding of if you're getting there or fighting for it enough, all of those things. And I think that's why this season in particular, I'm having a really hard time, because it seems like there's more emphasis on the surface level action or word and not what is underlying it, like the focus in Rachel and Gabby season on an engagement and not really thinking about what's underneath an engagement. And same with these words, that there's not a lot of emphasis or even discussion that we see that is about what a person is meaning when they're saying I'm falling in love. Yeah. Or even what love means.
Ooh, they would need a lot more time to do that.
They would.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing with falling in love that I don't think is helpful or even like fair is love is a verb, it's an action. And it usually means that someone is doing or saying or thinking or feeling certain things that equate to what love means to that person, their expression of love, their experience of love. And so where does the falling in love fit within that, action verb,
Right.
One more question about love.
Okay.
It's a big one, I guess.
I'm nervous.
So on this show, as we said, this formula of usually the contestant says, I love you, and they need to make a decision about whether or not they're ready to either propose or get engaged or accept a proposal from someone who hasn't said, I love you yet.
Eek.
Say more about the eek.
How can you get engaged to somebody that you don't know loves you?
It's really asking a lot, right? Yeah. And that's, I think, the part where I empathize so much for the contestants, because it's so much to ask that someone can commit or is ready to commit to a lifetime, if that's your understanding of what happens with an engagement or marriage. But let's say, in this case, a lifetime of someone who you don't even know loves you. That is terrifying. So I'm uncomfortable.
Reasonably so.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And I think just this dialogue that we got into about love and falling in love is more than we've ever seen happen on the show, which is a problem.
That would be a really cool aside that they could do. As far as, I mean, they won't probably, but that would be really cool if they describe that, like, because this is what the show is about. It's it's what it surrounds, that there was some education on it.
Yes.
I mean, and whether that's through those kind of like Jesse type interviews where he comes in and they talk and like they break it down a little bit, or it's a little more formal and they get experts on the show and they have them talk about it. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I think that would be much more productive and meaningful than some of these like group dates they have where they're like making each other into a burrito or like an ice cream sundae.
Or they're sumo wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like ways to kind of deepen that connection and get to a place of understanding, like, do we actually have common ground here? Do we value the same things? Are we speaking the same language? Because I think that that's what I fear is happening on the show, is that one person says I'm falling in love and it means something very different to someone else.
Yeah. I mean, and that's even a good point with all of these dates, that they often have like physical challenges, or sometimes they're sex education ones, but rarely is there some sort of emotional education. I'm saying rare. I don't know if there ever have been.
Not to my memory.
Yeah, since we're talking about it, that like that would be such a great trio of, okay, so you have this like fun, lighthearted kind of way to get to know somebody. You have this more physical way to get to know somebody, and then you have this emotional way to get to know somebody.
Wait, I just thought of one.
What?
Do you remember in Clayton season when they brought in the couples therapist?
Oh,
that was not this.
No, not like that. Different
for sure.
Different.
I remember our Bachelor group chat was out of control with the family therapist.
That's not how it goes.
But they made an attempt, but the attempt was not this. It wasn't an effort to get like deeper or provide education, or
that was you need to be vulnerable. We're going to force you to be vulnerable. What best way to do it is to force you to be in therapy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ugh. That gave us a bad reputation. I think it would scare me from going to therapy if I saw that.
And I'd never been before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, there are a lot of different ways that I think the show could potentially handle this. But I guess the reason that we like to even talk reactivity TV or talk about reality TV is that there is a lot to be learned in some of these moments and through some of these themes. And I imagine what we're going to continue to come back to is be more communicative and open with your feelings and with your experiences in order to really understand if you are, if there is an understanding there. That's the takeaway, I suppose. Definitely. So falling in love.
Falling in love. You didn't convince me,
okay.
But
I made you think about it a little bit more, maybe.
Yes, yeah, no, for sure. And especially when it comes to this show and what they're missing. Maybe what we can say now is that we want to talk about some other tropes, some other characters that kind of get painted in the show, some other ideas that have been thrown out there, like the getting there and the fighting for, like we mentioned, but also the villain and the front runner and these things that also just seem to come up every time. So what would be great is if we could hear from our listeners, and we'll share what you want us to break down for you when it comes to those. What do you want to know about what it means to become the villain? Or what does getting there mean to you in your relationship or in your life? Fighting for it? How can you fight for something that is, I don't know, is in the show? Like, is that, we could get into it, but maybe it makes sense to you. And in some way, they're fighting for time. They're fighting for attention. They're fighting for a space to grow the relationship. I don't know. But there's definitely more to that.
Way more to that. Yeah. Because that's it's unclear. I don't know what that means.
Yes.
So yeah, if you have any tropes, any phrases, any characters, any themes that you see so consistently come up on the show, let us know which ones you want us to unpack, and let us know your thoughts too. We'd love to know where you weigh in on the falling in love journey.
Are you Team Catherine? Or are you Team Amy?
That's fine. All right. So that will wrap us up for this bonus episode about love on The Bachelor, and we'll be back with more.